Achtung. Welcome, Thursday listeners, to We Have Ways of Making You Talk. We are still at Tobin's farm. In the background, you may hear some mooing, some sheep. That's because they're getting ready to surrender, because James Holland and I have taken control of a Sherman tank.
It's not just any old Sherman tank either. This is the Sherman tank that was restored by Adrian Barrell, and actually Adrian was at the Chalk Valley History Festival a year or so ago, and we did do a small podcast from the turret in here. But this is an amazing tank, Al, because this is probably the most original and complete Sherman tank you'll ever get inside. Right,
and we are. Well, I'm in the commander's hatch. You're in the gunner's.
I'm in the loader's hatch.
Hatch. Now, well, you don't have a hatch. That's the first thing that strikes me.
Not a hatch. I'm in the loader's seat.
You're in his position. So let's say this tank gets brewed up.
Yeah.
I get out dead quick.
If you're lucky.
If I'm lucky, I get out dead quick. If I haven't been.
But if you do get out, you'll still be machine gunned to death.
I know, but
the
point is you're not going anywhere quickly, are you? If you're there. I mean, anyway, so. The last time.
Well, do you remember Stan Perry?
Yeah.
And he was saying that every so often while they were operational, he was suddenly go, right, everyone out, stop, get out. Yeah. And they practice that drill over and over and over again because of the difficulties of getting out of these things. I mean, the truth of the matter is, whether you're in a Panther, whether you're in a T-34, whether you're in a Sherman, whether you're in a Cromwell, these are absolutely awful to get out of. I mean, you just got to hope you don't get hit. And if you do get hit, you've got to hope it's a glancing blow and nothing more, because these are absolutely hellish. And one of the things that strikes me when I'm standing here in this turret is we are just surrounded by ammo. So there's a whole load of 75mm shells on the floor.
Yes.
Underneath by the feet of the gunner, there's a whole load of stacks which are empty, but like a wine rack for more shells. The shells all around the edge of the turret. There's a whole load more which are extending down to the driver's compartment. We've then got a whole.
There's 22 magazines of machine gun ammunition. There's boxes of hand grenades.
There's boxes of 30 caliber machine gun bullets as well. The truth of the matter is if a shell penetrates this
and sets fire to any.
Well, what happens is, you say you're hit by a 75mm round. That 75 doesn't necessarily punch a whole 75mm hole.
No.
It might only penetrate as much as like a penny.
Yeah.
In size, but what will then happen is you'll be able to see daylight up to say the size of a penny, like half an inch or whatever. But you will also get a glob of metal,
red hot fragments.
A glob of metal, probably the size of the impact, so that would be 75mm.
Yeah.
Will then just go, whoosh, straight out.
So 3 inches.
So say it hits just to the left of my head. That will come out. The glob will then hit the guard around the 75mm gun in here in the breech in the turret. But in addition to that, lots of spalling will just go all over the place, white hot. And obviously, if that hits one of these shells, and you add that to the kinetic energy which is being created from the force of that impact, this just goes whoosh. And that is why something as heavy as this can go kind of 20, 30 feet into the air. And you're all brown bread. It's horrific.
But now, so surveying the turret, I'm in the... so the commander here... one of the things
You've got a seat behind you.
I've got a seat behind me, and I can stand on that as well. And yes, in fact, I've two seats. So there's one higher up and one lower down. There's the thing I'm feeling by just poking my head out of here is how exposed you feel.
You're feeling a little bit vulnerable.
And just with my head out, my head out, you feel exposed, you feel vulnerable, you feel very, very visible, which of course is the thing that they all talk about. But if you drive around with the lid down, you can't see properly. And if you drive around with the thing open, you're going to get shot in the head. So, I mean...
It's slightly lose-lose, isn't it?
It's ever so slightly lose-lose. But to describe it for you, listeners, it's painted white, principally. The sort of at the inside of the turret is painted white, and then here at the commander's position, there's a thing for binoculars. There's signal cartridges. There's and then there's the periscopes on the hatch, and the cupola spins round so you can look all around. Then just starting up the armoured car behind us. There's a switch here, isn't there, James? Which is
Yeah,
which
so
rotates.
I think this is one of the things that's unique to the Sherman. So just by your nose, as you're looking forward, underneath your hatch, just in front of it, above the gunner's head, there is a little black box, and on it is a little switch, and this is an override switch for the turret, for rotating the turret.
So as the commander, you can rotate the turret to wherever you
So
want.
normally you would expect the gunner down below. You can see he's got his two wheels. He's got his elevator and he's got his turret rotating wheel. That's how you control that. But suddenly you're the commander. You've got your head poked out and you can suddenly see something moving and you want to move quick. So you can just push that switch to the left and it'll override. I mean, it's a brilliant thing. And then if you look to the left of the breech block here, you can see this, what looks like a sort of suspension arm. Yeah. That's the gun stabilising gyro, which again is unique to the Sherman tank. And what that means is you can operate this gun far more accurately on the move than any other tank.
Well, I remember Ken Tout talking about that a very, very long time ago. He said, that when they got the Sherman, they were blown away by that as a piece of kit. And it meant they could fire on the move and they could fire pretty accurately. And certainly accurately enough to, cause the other side distress.
Yes,
keep people's heads down with this it's the 75mm gun.
Well, there's that great description in Ken's book, Ken Tout's book, where he describes how they do destroy those three Tigers, of one of which, of course, is Michael Wittmann in that action just south of Caen, and in early, I think it's August the 7th, isn't it?
Yeah.
1944. And what they do is, as soon as they see the Tigers, they just pummel them with 75mm rounds, because they can fire so much more quickly than any other tank. Just one after the other. And what that does is that makes the Tiger crew put their hatches down, and then they are effectively blind.
They can't see.
And then your 17-pounder gunner, your Joe Eakins or whoever it is, can then take his time to aim properly and send that one killing shot.
Of course, in the Firefly, which is the tank we're talking about there, the loader has a hatch. They put a hatch in because the breech in the 17th pounder is that much bigger, and the gun gear in the turret is that much bigger. And here's the radio behind the breech here. In the Firefly, they cut a hole in the back wall here, put it in the box that's behind us, and move it all backwards to make room for the extra breech, because there is a 17-pounder lying around it. We're going to look at that probably in another podcast. There is a 17-pounder Firefly 17-pounder lying around here somewhere, which we'll talk about later. Compared to the T-34 that we were in a few weeks ago, in our first escape from lockdown extravaganza, this is a tidier build, isn't it? You can feel the outside is still like a roughish casting, but it's nothing like as imperfect as the T-34, is it?
No, and it's a lot more roomy. I mean, let's face it, it's not roomy at all, but it's a lot more roomy than the T-34. Yeah. The other thing I think is interesting is here you've got the loader. The loader is on the left-hand side of the breech, which, for considering most people are right-handed, that makes more sense for the loading, which of course is not the case on the Panther or the Jagdpanther, where you're loading from the right, which makes no sense whatsoever. And I still can't get my head around that. I mean, it is. I think that what is interesting about when you're considering tanks, everyone just looks at armour and they look at gun, and the point about the Sherman tank is there is so many more facets to it that make that whole argument more nuanced. I know we keep going on and using this word nuance the whole time, but it is really important when one is considering tanks and what they can do and what they're offering, and what this lacks in gun and what it lacks in armour, it gains in many other ways, such as mechanical reliability, sturdiness, simpleness for something so complex, the gun stabilising gyro, the override switch. There's lots of things which are just really, really good and helpful attributes to it when you're in a kind of combat situation.
Yeah. I mean, the other interesting thing, or the thing I noticed when we first got in here, is that the turret is enclosed. So we're in an enclosed fighting compartment here, aren't we? So that there's a sort of grill between us and where the driver and the radio operated machine gun on the right-hand side of the tank would be sitting, which wasn't the case in the T-34. The T-34 was one open sort of compartment, but that's
like a sort of basket, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's like you're in a rotating basket. Right. I mean, I think we could talk about this, but I think we want to hear it going, don't we, James?
I think we do. Yeah. let's start it up. Pretty loud though, isn't it?
It's quite loud.
It's not as loud as a T-34.
Well, not yet.
But it's sort of beast-like, isn't it?
Yes, it's got like a bear-like growl, hasn't it?
Blimey. So how much air gets sucked through?
Well, yes, because the engine's behind us, and there are radiators that draw the engine through the tank. I mean, it's still going to get really hot in here if you had the hatches down and the engine's running.
Well, the weird thing about operating this, particularly if you're at the front and you've got your head out, is you're boiling down below, but your head can be absolutely freezing numb. It's a very odd sensation.
Yeah.
But there's a sort of pulse to it, isn't there?
Yeah.
That sort of thrum that's just kind of goes through your... I mean, I can feel it kind of sort of pulsating through my entire body.
Yep.
And it's sort of pounding your ears, isn't it, in your head?
Well, yeah, and then you've got your internal comms on and the external net.
And of course, those headphones and that net, external and internal net, that's going to further kind of make you kind of feel you're apart from the real world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Goodness me.
Amazing.
Oh, bit of throttle. I remember talking to Jim Clark when I was in when we were doing that 30 core run last September. He reckoned about 160, 180 miles,
right,
full tank. The big problem is that you do need to stop every 10 miles or so, 10, 15 miles. It just can't run forever.
Yeah.
They start to overheat, things go wrong.
Yeah.
They just need to just calm down, settle down. So it's not a sort of, you can understand why war is a slow business, even if you're mechanised.
Yeah.
It takes time. Oh God, that pulsating
yeah.
is amazing.
We need to take a short break now. I'll see you in a tick.
Makes the Sherman sound like a part-time tank.
Does a bit, doesn't it?
Well, it's a Cromwell. It's a Cromwell
Listen
fired
to
up.
that.
So it's a Merlin engine in essence.
Oh, and it's starting to move out. It's starting to move. Look at that. It's a thing of wonder. It really is. Look at that. That's something else, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think Jerry can hear us coming?
I think Jerry can hear you coming. That's the idea, though, isn't it? As long as he doesn't drive it back over my Mini.
I mean, it does look awesome and low slung and menacing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And it is that much lower than that Sherman.
Yeah, much.
Okay, that subtle noise you can hear in the background, it's not cows mooing like earlier in this podcast. That's the sound of the Cromwell that has been started up. It's sort of 2/3 finished, I think it's fair to say, this Cromwell. The turret rotates, but not under its own motion, and but that is the engine is running, and what a sound, eh, James?
Absolutely amazing, yeah. I mean, Jerry's going to hear you coming on that one.
He
but what was
is.
amazing is we've just watched Tom hand rotate the turret.
Yeah, you just swung it, didn't he?
Absolutely incredible.
I mean, what I'm struck by is how low slung this is. Just, you have to really climb up a Sherman to get up onto the turret here. This is, I don't know. The top fender is like chest height on me rather than that much higher. So you do get the feeling it's got a lower profile.
But also, for all its sort of bolts and slight feel and Meccano on a giant scale, it looks like a proper tank, doesn't it?
Oh,
It looks meaty and mean and powerful. And you know,
And, you know, that-
you wouldn't want to come up against it, would
Well,
you?
and the Christie suspension, people go on about the Christie suspension on a T34. There it is on a British tank.
Yeah.
And I am really struck though by the bloody noise of that Meteor, the sound of which is of course, as we were saying the other day, the
side of the Merlin.
Bastard offspring of the Merlin.
Somehow, though, the Merlin and the Spitfire is an incredibly sort of sweet and beautiful sound.
Yeah, it's because you're not standing next to it.
No,
That's because
not.
it's soaring overhead.
No, it's not. It's not. Even when you're standing by a static Spitfire with the engine rolling up, waiting to taxi, it still sounds good. This just sounds throaty and rough and guttural.
And nasty.
Nasty.
I mean, I think it. What a treat, though.
Amazing.
I've not. I don't think I've seen a running Cromwell before. I've certainly not stood this close to one.
Well, listen, you know, we're biased. We're biased about Cromwells, but you know, I think this is, in the flesh, it's more impressive than it is in a
museum,
Imperial,
in a static display,
yes, or on a kind of little bit of Odgie Poulson's footage that he's tweeted.
Yeah. Much as I like his footage tweets, listen to that.
Should we just enjoy that for a moment?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can smell it, all right.
Yeah, the fuel is pungent. I mean,
We're not saving the planet here, that's for sure.
No, we are saving the planet from the bad guys.
From Jerry.
From Jerry. I mean, it is interesting how different this engine sounds to the Sherman. God, I feel like we can stop shouting now. Oh, what a relief.
What?
What
a treat.
an unholy racket.
Yeah, amazing.
Incredible.
That's 50 quid's worth of petrol.
There we go, £50 worth of petrol.
We owe you big time.
Yeah. Well, okay, well.
So listen, we should say farewell to the Cromwell and move over to the Comet.
Yeah, let's go and talk about the Comet. Right, so after the roar of the Cromwell there, and I have to say that was, I mean, you were really enjoying the sound of the Sherman, James, but that was the real thing right in your face.
Oh
there.
my God, that was amazing, wasn't it? It
Incredible.
was properly loud and scary.
Incredible.
And guttural.
So one day we will hear this tank in action. What have we got here, Toby?
That's right. This is a Comet tank. This is a Mark II. There's really no big differences between the Mark I and the Mark II other than the fishtail exhaust pipes. And it goes back to post-war Britain, where again we were trying to raise some money, so we came up with the improved Comet by literally rerouting the exhaust pipe out to two fishtails, and that was it, and call it a Mark II.
So we could sell it to the Finns or whoever.
So it would sell it to anyone if they
Right.
had the money.
Yeah.
But it's in many ways similar to the Cromwell, and certainly a member of the Cromwell family. You can tell that straight off as soon as you look at it. Got a much larger turret. The turret's holding a 17-pounder gun, but not the 17-pounder anti-tank gun, a thing called the 77 Short.
Yeah.
Which again, it's a very powerful gun. It's shorter than the anti-tank gun, but
it's high velocity, is it?
Very high velocity, and again, like the 17-pounder anti-tank, could take on anything that the Germans could throw at us at that
But also
stage.
can fire a heat round for infantry support. So,
Yeah,
so
and-
it's a dual-purpose gun.
That's right, yeah. It fired all the varieties of ammunition, particularly after the war, when they'd had time to develop them and get them out there.
And what about armour, Tobin? I mean, is that substantially improved, thickened?
No, it's much the same as the Cromwell. The turret is the biggest improvement in that you've no longer got that slab-sided job. You've got a mix of cast and rolled armour, which has been welded, and you can see there with the silver weld marks. The other thing with the turret is that instead of having the old hydraulic traverse, you've now got what is actually a very advanced electronic traverse, where the motor acts as a lock as well as actually traversing the turret.
Right.
So when you turn the handle, it turns. When you stop turning it, the motor locks itself solid electrically, and so it can't be knocked off
Wow.
direction.
Gosh. So what we're really looking at here is the sort of summation of British tank development. I mean, just before the Centurion. So
During the war. 'cause
yeah,
this
during the
was
war.
a
Yeah, this is a
wartime-
wartime tank.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because 11th Armoured are refitted with these in January or something, or December 1944, 1945.
Very tail end of 44,
Yeah.
but they didn't get into action until I think it was February, possibly even March.
by
45.
which time there aren't that many Tigers around for the 17-pounder
No.
short 17 to deal with. So.
But even so, it's a heck of a thing, isn't
No,
it?
it's
And if
incredible.
you think about, we've been looking at that Cavalier, then we've looked at the Centaur and the Cromwell, and now this, you can see that evolution that you were talking about earlier on, well, in the last episode. And it is a big proper
3
tank.
years?
Yeah,
In 3 years.
that's some
And
going.
you consider that they're in 1940 they're fielding Matilda 1s and Matilda 2s.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean that, and I know obviously the Germans are fielding Panzer 1s, Panzer 2s, Panzer 3s in 1940, and by the end of the war you're looking at Panthers with infrared sights on and stuff. But they started earlier,
Much earlier.
and so the British are running to catch up. But I think it's fair to say that they do.
Yeah.
The other thing is, you look at this. This is absolutely comparable to a kind of sort of Panther and Tiger, isn't it? In terms of kind of bulk and space it's taking up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Also,
that kind of scale.
What this has got, which those German tanks didn't have, was manoeuvrability. When you drive one of these, they are incredibly manoeuvrable. You select which gear you want to be in, you put your foot down, let the clutch out, and away it goes. And in my opinion, it's a far better driving vehicle than even a Sherman. And particularly, as I say, those very heavy German tanks where you had to be so careful of the transmission, and they were grossly underpowered. These weren't. These had plenty of power for the weight.
And this is a Meteor again, so like the
Meteor again, yeah.
So where will you find your engine to put in this tank?
In that shed over there. We've got about 6 or 7 of them. And
6 or 7
yeah,
meters.
and the engine for this has already been test run. We'll show you the video sometime, but on the bench test run, and so it does everything it's supposed
Well,
to
I hope
do.
we can come back when it's actually fully up and running. Thank you so much for having us. What a thing, eh, James?
Oh, amazing, yeah. Really, really good. It's exciting, isn't it? Seeing it, you can't beat getting up close and personal, can you?
Absolutely. Cheerio.
Cheerio.
Cheerio.